And joining us now here on Market Talk, we're able to catch up with him for a few minutes. He is with Zaner Hedge, and he's out on the Pro Farmer Crop Tour. Ted Seifried is with us. Ted, good to hear from you, buddy. I know you're in Northwest Iowa right now, and it's been a busy couple of days for you.
Yeah, it really has, Jesse. Crop Tour is a very busy time for us, just running around and seeing what we see. I gotta say, usually we don't have a whole lot of big surprises when we come out on Crop Tour. Especially like guys like me, I've got clients all over, so they kind of tell me what they're seeing. But this year's a bit different. We are definitely seeing a bit of a surprise here. That started in South Dakota on day one, that continued through with Nebraska the second half of day one, and then Nebraska yesterday. It started out a little bit better as we were going through predominantly irrigated fields. Irrigated's going to irrigate, right? And they were okay. They weren't fantastic, but they were okay. But then as we got closer to Nebraska City, Nebraska, on our trek from Grand Island, we started getting in that real dry area once again. And yeah, it didn't look great. So day two of Nebraska kind of pulled up day one a little bit, but not as much as I think we were hoping. Mm-hmm. And then here we're in Iowa today, it's always corn in Iowa, but it's not been amazing either. Similar to yesterday, we started off with some really good yield pulls. I think through our first 7 stops, we were only slightly behind last year's average through those same. We're doing the car I'm in. We're doing the same routes every day as that we did last year, so that we can get that kind of direct comparison. And we were only slightly behind, but then in the last 4 stops, that's really changed pretty dramatically. We knew that the further we were going to go north in Iowa, and especially as we were getting northeast Iowa, just based on what we had seen in northwest Iowa, just based on what we had seen in northeast Nebraska and what we had seen in southeast South Dakota, we kind of knew that would have carried over a little bit to over here. So that has been the case, and we're going to continue to carry on a little further north, and I'm wondering if it's just going to get drier and drier once again.
Well, Ted, I know you mentioned some of what you saw in the first couple of days, and we've seen those results, and obviously that area of South Dakota pretty tough, and that into Nebraska, and it feels like a lot of folks with the trade within agriculture really watching today and finishing up in tomorrow for these Iowa and Illinois numbers. I know the Eastern numbers are looking fairly solid, but these Iowa numbers, especially Western Iowa, where you're talking, wondering just with some of the dryness out there, it's really going to be pivotal, it feels like, for the trade here the next day or so when we get those final Iowa Illinois numbers to see what is out there on the tour.
Yeah, Jesse, today's usually the big day, Iowa, right? We've got both sides of the tour in Iowa, west on west, east on east. We cover pretty much every county in Iowa. So that's what we want to know, if the East is going to make up for the West, and is the East going to make up for South Dakota and Nebraska. A quick note on South Dakota, though, too. The area that we go through in South Dakota, it's not a comprehensive view of South Dakota. That area that we go through, that southeastern area in South Dakota, is generally one of the better parts of South Dakota, but it isn't always. If you go to northeastern South Dakota this year, they're the ones that are going to be pulling that national or that state average up. So I want to kind of tell people to take that Pro Farmer South Dakota number with a little bit of a grain of salt. I spent 2 days before Crop Tour going through some of the areas that Crop Tour doesn't cover in South Dakota and parts of North Dakota. There's better things there than what the tour saw on the first day and the first half of the first day of the tour. So that's the one thing. I mean, you look at the South Dakota number that Pro Farmer came up with, and you say, oh gosh, that's shockingly low. Yeah, it's going to get pulled up overall. And I think the Pro Farmer guys know that, when they come to the end of the tour and they give us their objective yield number, I think they'll be including that. I've been talking to Chip about it a lot and those guys. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, markets today are a little bit quiet after a whole bunch of strength the last couple of days. because of what you said, Jesse. I mean, we're all kind of hanging on pins and needles to see what happens with Illinois and the Iowa numbers, compared to what we've seen. Indiana was disappointing too. So up until this point, we've seen some disappointing numbers. But if we see some better numbers in Illinois and Indiana, or Illinois and Iowa, that's gonna sort of soothe that a little bit, offset it to some extent. So yeah, market's taking a little bit of a pause. In the meantime, we've seen some good sales business to China, and China's having a major heat wave too. So they've had some motivation to come in and make some purchases between the Pro Farmer findings and their own weather there. It's really great to finally see these numbers coming out of China. If that keeps up, then we can get a little bit more excited about the demand side of the equation. That's been my problem for the past few weeks. This is normally when China's an aggressive buyer, and they hadn't been. So if this is what needed to happen to really trigger them to get more aggressive, then this is going to be a pretty decent thing for the markets going forward. And I start to get less of a demand bear.
Mm-hmm. Ted, soybeans real quick as well from the tour. We touched on corn. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent. What are your thoughts on soybeans the last couple of days, and especially today in Western Iowa?
Yeah, soybeans are always we don't predict yield here, right? On tour, it's a pod count. And when we measure pod count, we're measuring potential. And pod counts are lower than what they were last year, and they're lower than the 3-year average. So you would naturally think that yield potentials may be lower, but that doesn't have to be the case. If you get some really good rains late, even on a lower pod count, you can still have some very big soybean yields. And honestly, in my opinion, the beans that I've seen, just from a health perspective, have been a lot better than a lot of the corn that we've seen. In fact, some of the areas where we're seeing some of the worst corn, we've actually had some pretty decent pod count numbers. But there too, you've got some really flat pods. Soybeans are the ones that could really benefit from a good rain in the short term, a really rather short term, certainly within the next 10 days. If we were to get that, and by the way, we've been getting a little bit of rain in Western Iowa here today. But if they're going to get that, if they get that rain, I think this soybean crop can really come around and surprise some people that are looking at these pod count numbers and saying, oh no, this is a sharp decline from last year. Yeah, okay, again, we've been measuring potential, not yield for soybeans. But if soybeans can't get that rain, in Nebraska in particular, I mean, Nebraska is a bean powerhouse. If they don't get that rain, the dryland soybeans are going to be a problem. So we're still very much in a weather market when it comes to soybeans.
Well, Ted, great stuff. I know you're busy. I know your Twitter account is lighting up this week. Folks can follow along with your findings. And, of course, I know that's at the Ted Spread. Appreciate the time, buddy. I know you're busy. Should ask real quick the age-old question, if you had any good food this week.
You know what? Currently, sitting outside of Sizzling Jay's Bar and Grill in Galva, and we were here last year, and it was really very solid. So we had to come back, and it's been good. Oh, and we found a really nice cider place, surprisingly nice, in what was it, Ashton, Nebraska yesterday, kind of in between Lincoln and Omaha, and that was really good. But I mean, that's the thing. We get on Twitter and we ask you, hey guys, here's our route. Where should we eat? And so we're always open for suggestions, and you guys always come up with some really good ones.
Well, enjoy the rest of the tour. Appreciate all the insight and taking a few minutes to join us today, Ted. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again soon, buddy.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jesse. You take care. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Ted Seifried, Zaner Ag Hedge. You can learn more online as well, Zaner.com. And also follow Ted on Twitter at the Ted Spread.